Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another top 10 video in the Steven Hour. Today we'll be doing the top 10, my personal top 10 favorite villains from the TV show Gotham. Now, for those who don't know, Gotham is pretty much a prequel series to about Jim Gordon's rise within the Gotham Police Department, but at the same time, we also get introduced to a whole slew of cast of Batman rogue villains, and it's also where we get to see more in depth the Bruce Wayne's origin story. Now, this show takes a lot of liberties of being creatively different, and as a result, the villains are, in my opinion, some of the most interesting incarnations of the series. And now just keep in mind, this is purely subjective, this is purely my personal opinion, and let's get on with it. And also I want to point out there are no honorable mentions or a dishonorable mention. Like I said, this show is just great. Now, it ended its run last year after 5 seasons. And this show is divided. People love it or hate it. I would have not been making this video if I didn't like it. I actually pretty like it. And despite the fact what you may think of the stories, I do believe that the villains and their character evolutions are some of the most entertaining things to watch, especially, and it's not just that, but it's also the other supporting characters as well. There's characters like Harvey Bullock, Jim Gordon, Bruce Wayne, Selena Kyle, Barbara Keene, you name it, and also Alfred Pennyworth, they're just all great. Now, like I said, this is purely subjective. This is my top 10. So let's get on with the list. I think I had enough rambling on for 1 minute. So, at number 10, the Ventriloquist, portrayed by Andrew Sullivan. Now, this is the first time a ventriloquist has been portrayed in live action, and I liked how season 4 built up his character. Now, like I said, the show takes different creative liberties to what is already been expected in the show. So in Gotham, the ventriloquist's real name is actually Arthur Penn, and he's an accountant for the mob. In season 4, he's primarily in the employ of the Penguin, and though he didn't have the puppet then, or the puppet character then, he acted just like the ventriloquist, and I automatically knew, seeing him, this might be the future ventriloquist, just how he was acting, the mannerisms. He may not have the name, but it's definitely him. And of course, I do like how he is just a coward. He works under various crime lords. So that was a bit of his character. Come season 5, of course, there was big plans for him to really be larger than life. But of course, season 5 was only put into 12 episodes, and I thought that was best. This is the final season. They needed a shorter storyline. And so he becomes a ventriloquist in one episode, although, he doesn't fully become a ventriloquist with the Scarface dummy, but he does stick around as a minor recurring character. And then, of course, he dies, and then, of course, he comes back. Well, we thought he died, turns out he didn't. He comes back, and he ends up with this dummy, and already his mind is snapped. Now, like I said, this is a perfect adaptation of the ventriloquist character. He looks the part, he acts the part, and it's interesting because the actor is an actual ventriloquist, so that's really great. That really makes him special. Now, why is he at number 10? Well, everyone can agree, we were happy to finally have this character finally have his debut, the ventriloquist in live action with Scarface, only to literally be killed in his proper episode debut. And that, for me personally, I went ballistic, because he's a very huge B-lister villain in the Batman Rogues Gallery. I would have liked if he could have just stuck around a bit more. Made it that he's apprehended and his mind was completely broken, and know that Batman is going to face this guy in the future. That's why I'm mostly ticked off. Other than that, I can't deny that the trailer is great. I just wish that we could have had more of the Scarface puppet on the show. instead of that one episode. Other than that, it's a perfectly great adaptation. Number 9, Professor Pig, portrayed by Michael Curvius. Hopefully I pronounced these actors' names right. Now, Professor Pig is very new to the Batman Rogues Gallery. Very new. He was introduced in the 2000s, and I can honestly say this is very different to what I'm expected. And, well, I'm kind of divided, to say the least. Okay, so let's start with the positives with this character. Well, he is introduced in Season 4 as this serial killer madman, pretty much going up against not just the Penguin, but also Gotham PD, particularly its crooked cops. In fact, he starts killing crooked cops on the Penguin's payroll, and they end up wearing these pig masks. Hence, he's killing pigs. Cops, pigs. It's a thing. And as a result, he's doing this in this sort of twisted crusade, and he's in the media. He's this almost like a Hannibal Lecter, I guess you could say, type character with, constantly taunting Jim to catch him. And yeah, so automatically, like I said, this character is completely different from what is expected in the comics. You see, in the comics, he's basically this warped surgeon who basically, surgically does horrible things to people, and they become Dolatrons. They can't feel pain. They've lost. My minds are completely gone. Yeah, and of course his name is Leslie Valentine. The same in the show, technically. Well, and at the same time, not really. Eventually, the character gets apprehended. He's in Arkham. He then escapes. It then revealed that he was a serial killer before, but he had a completely different MO. And then it's revealed that he's actually a hitman whose MO is to impersonate serial killers, though it turns out that this guy might have been completely made up and was working for Sophia Falcone in an attempt to get rid of Penguin and in her endgame to take over Gotham. Now, why is he... Now, he's at number 9 because at least we spend more time with Professor Pig. But, unlike the ventriloquist, who I had no problems with his character development, I have a problem with the idea that he's a hitman. Again, yeah, that bit annoys me a bit, that he's a hitman who impersonates serial killers. Nothing wrong with that, but for Professor Pig, yeah. I like how he's done differently. He is a serial killer who kills crooked cops. I like that angle with the idea of pigs. That is a good angle. My gripe is that it just kind of falls flat at his finale. I mean, I get he's a very new villain. He's quite the B-lister, so it made sense he was going to get killed off. But have that kind of a reveal, yeah, that just came out of nowhere, and these are sour tastes. I can't deny the performance by this guy. Okay, Michael does a phenomenal performance, and I like that dinner scene where he's like doing his rendition of the Cell Block Tango, or as he call it, the Meat Pie Tango. Again, I love the actors that play these villains. They really give it their all. Despite the fact you can gripe with how it's written or how they look, you can't deny that these actors are really enthusiastic with these characters. Overall, yeah, he's above the ventriloquist because we get to spend more time with him in this villain alter ego than we ever did with our number 10. But my gripe is that the end fell flat. If it wasn't, who knows, it might have been placed a bit higher. But that's my gripe. And that's really it. Number 8. The Scarecrow. Portrayed by... Here. Portrayed by Charlie Tayan in Season 1. And then came back for a few episodes in Season 4, sorry. But then to have David W. Thompson portray him for the rest of the series. Now, automatically, this guy definitely a unique depiction of the Scarecrow. First off, when we meet him, Jonathan Crane is actually a kid, and his father is plays a important role in his origin. Again, this origin takes more of its liberties, less from the more standard Scarecrow depiction of the normal comics, and more of the New 52. Basically, his origin in the show is with the death with Jonathan's when Jonathan's mother died, his father was stricken with guilt, with grief, and decided to create this fear drug to erase someone's fear. Now, Jonathan's father ends up dying in a shootout. Jonathan only got half of the fear toxin in him. And as a result, he sees scarecrows. And automatically, that was to be built up for the characters, and that was supposed to be it. But season 4 came along and brought in the scarecrow and completely revamped the character. Brought the character back. Here, Jonathan was locked up in Arkham. Well, at least in Arkham, at a mental hospital, really. And he is released by a gang of hoods who want to use his formula. And they taunt him, they scare him with an actual scarecrow. That's what he's scared of. But eventually he overcomes his fear and embraces it, becoming the scarecrow. And as we go throughout the course of this season and the next, the character's design is constantly changing. So automatically I'm sold with the look. And he wants to spread fear. He wants to spread fear in an attempt to he wants to spread fear. Again, he is classic Scarecrow, and he is more of a side character in later episodes, with being a part of many many supervillain ensembles. He spreads fear for what was his motive? Yeah, spreads fear, and his motive, of course, was for the sake of spreading fear, but it's also just to relieve people of their fear, make them embrace it just as he was. So in a way, you could see where he's coming from. Also, like I said, I like how the character was constantly changing. The look of the character, and eventually the picture you see is the final one. Now, we don't know what happens to him, really. You see, in Season 5, only had a short episodes. And in Season 5, he was a gang leader controlling a certain portion of the city. Though it is believed that he was recaptured and sent to Arkham. Automatically, this is a completely different interpretation. Well, first off, he's a teenager. And I like how, the origin of how he's scared of scarecrows, how that was implanted. All that I found was done really well. And how he slowly becomes the Scarecrow is very different. Now, he's not a comic accurate depiction, you could say, but I can't deny that it is different and very unique. And at the same time, I love the visual design of the character. It feels very like the Scarecrow. And that's all I can say. Number 7, the Mad Hatter. Now, this is the Mad Hatter's second live-action debut. He had a live-action debut way back in '66 when the Mad Hatter was portrayed by David Wayne. Of course, that was based on the imposter Mad Hatter, but to its credit, it wasn't revealed that would be the imposter version. Anyway, this version of the Mad Hatter in Gotham was portrayed by Benedict Samuel. Again, hope that's been pronounced right. Now, in the show, he is a hypnotist who comes to Gotham to find his sister Alice, who it turns out is a metahuman. Well, not metahuman, but just like one of these what's called freaks because of the Hugo Strange experiments, who sadly Hugo Strange is not on the list. And these are not my personal top 10. And as a result, his character's introduction wants to find his sister, and with the help of Jim Gordon. However, things end badly with the sister's death, and he blames Gordon for his sister's death, and targets not just Gordon, but all of Gotham to feel his pain of losing his sister. Automatically, this character feels very fleshed out. And I like the hypnotist angle. It makes sense because in the comics, the character is known for hypnotism. And the Alice of Wonderland, again, the character was already a bit bonkers when we met him. So for me, it makes sense. Maybe the character is a bit more mystery as to why he was bonkers. Automatically, I like the character's look. It looks like the the whole look I just felt really feels like the Mad Hatter. It may not be short as you expect the Mad Hatter, but again, Gotham takes liberties to be different, but at the same time, very unique and very close to the source material. Automatically, I liked how the character is. He was introduced in Season 3, and he will continue to reappear in Seasons 4 and 5, mostly in special guest appearances. Eventually, he gains the ability to mind control people simply by talking instead of hypnotism, which we don't give any explanations, but I just kind of like that that's what they went with. It is nice they went with that way. Again, I absolutely love the character. His introduction was great, and I just like how his motivation is revenge for the death of his sister Alice. Something different than what's normally expected in the comics. Yeah, I like this interpretation, and I just hope that maybe people who write the Mad Hatter in the comics can just look at this and take some creative liberties from this, but at the same time, still be different. Number 6. Sophia Falcone, portrayed by Crystal Reed. Crystal Reed. Now, I had to include a member of the Falcone family on this list, or at least an old school mobsters. Now, I will admit, I was torn whether to include Fish Mooney, who was a character specifically created for the series, and then of course there was Carmine Falcone and Salvatore Maroni. Now, even though all those 3 mobsters are great and I really love them, I went with Sophia Falcone because first off, I'm a fan of Crystal Reed. I became a fan of hers because of this show, and then I'll find out she was in Teen Wolf, and because of that I watched Teen Wolf, and I became a fan of that show for so long. I consider Teen Wolf to be far better than The Vampire Diaries, which of course those are 2 shows I plan to review some point on my channel. Now, I like this character as she's very manipulative, and she's unlike a traditional Falcone. She's in complete opposite of her father. See, her father has honor, values honor, loyalty, and not just that, but he believes in honor. You know, like there's a line he will not cross. He's a man of his word. You know, he's a man of honor. Sophia literally has none of that. She wants to bring the Falcone name back to Gotham and rule it as its new crime lord. The problem is that she's a little bit insecure, a little bit psychotic, and again, this character's look is radically different to what she's used to in the comics. And I do like how she's very manipulative. She has this nice demeanor of being like this sweet, innocent girl, but really it's a facade, and we see her true evil colors. And she's a manipulator. Again, something I really like. And I do like, in an attempt to rule Gotham, she went so far as to kill her own father to turn the underworld against the Penguin and one particular employee of the Penguin is just very manipulative. She's a more of a femme fatale, and after all the female characters on the show, she's definitely my number 1 favorite. Of course, there's been others: Barbara Keene, Tabitha, Poison Ivy, again Fish Mooney. I just find her to be the best interpreter. I just find her performance just great, and I like how she's a female, strong, independent woman gangster. Now we got again other characters like that, other female crime lords trying to take over the city. We've had Fish Mooney, Barbara Keene actually did take over the city, but here I just find her just to be fantastic. And yeah, and I like how she's like this manipulative one. She has this just almost motherly feel, a young motherly feel to some extent. Like I said, I put her above Fish Mooney because I just love her performance. Nothing against Fish Mooney or the actress who played her, but I'm just more of a Sophia Falcone fan. In fact, write in the comments if Sophia Falcone went to war, was in a gang war between Fish Mooney before she got her powers, who do you think would win? Write that in the comments on what you guys would think. I really think you should do it. Anyway, she's at number 6. She's a really great character, and for me, she's just fantastic. Number 5, Victor Zsasz. Now, one of the most loved reoccurring villains on the show. Now, Victor Zsasz is radically different from one in the comics. You see, in the comics, he's a serial killer who carves tally marks into his skin to count out the number of victims. and was introduced in the 80s when when Batman comics were really starting to go dark. Now, this character does share some of that, the idea of cutting up tally marks, but in the show, he's radically different. First off, his humor was radically different. You see, he's more humorous, he's more lighthearted, at least, but he's also dark and he's literally Deadpool. I guess you could say Deadpool. It's like if Deadpool and Agent 47, from the video games Hitman series, had a baby, it'd be Victor Zsasz. Victor Zsasz was portrayed by Anthony Carrigan. And of course, I know this actor who had a brief appearance on The Flash as a recurring villain, The Mist, a metahuman with the ability to turn into poisonous gas. Interesting. Here, I just love his performance. He looks like Victor to an extent, and I do like how he is a hitman, and he literally was in the employ of Falcone and was very loyal to him, but when Falcone left the city, he ended up in the employ of the Penguin, and radically did for a lot of seasons, until eventually selling him out because his loyalty was always to Falcone and had a deeper connection and respect to Falcone than the Penguin. Eventually ended up in the employ of Sophia Falcone, along with a buddy of his that was introduced in season 4, Headhunter, who I found to be a very fun guy, and the two pair up was really great. I was upset that he didn't come back for season 5. By season 5, he was a gang leader, then kind of lost a lot of his territory, and eventually became rather secluded. And yeah, he would eventually, of course, be under the mind control of Poison Ivy, and that's where his story ends. We don't really see him really evolve into the more traditional Victor Zsasz from the comics, but then again, it's different, and I like that it is. For all we know, after all this crazy stuff he went through in Gotham, it would make sense that he would end up like Victor Zsasz, maybe in the future. And I kind of like that's what the way they went with. At least the ambiguous, possibly you could make up your own theories of how he became it. Overall, I just like that this is radically different, and he just provides a lot of the humor, you know. And again, he's different. I like how he provides a lot of humor. He's basically an assassin. I just like that he's just very funny, but also really takes up a lot of screen. He just brightens up the room every time he appears, and I love that. And yeah, Anthony just really nails the role here. He is absolutely fantastic. Coming in at number 4, Butch Gilzine / Solomon Grundy. Yeah. Now here's interesting. When the character first appeared in season 1, 2, 3, this character was supposed to be completely new. No ties to the comics. And basically, Butch Gilzine is a mobster. A hood, very well known in Gotham's underworld, and just like Victor Zsasz, he has been in the employ of many Gotham's mobs. Originally the right-hand man to Fish Mooney, eventually ending up as the right-hand man to the Penguin, eventually temporarily controlling the underworld at one point, but eventually the Penguin took over and he just went back to being his number 2 guy. Eventually he ended up in the employ of Barbara Keene, and pretty much did until eventually he ended up getting killed and was stuck in a coma. It is then revealed that his real name was Cyrus Gold, and as we know from the comics, Cyrus Gold is Solomon Grundy, the character originally a villain for the original Green Lantern. And he's essentially like he's in so many rogues galleries, it's hard to tell whose really rogues gallery should he be a part of, but it makes sense he fits in Gotham. Eventually, season 4, he evolves into Solomon Grundy, originally acting more like Solomon Grundy, with the whole grog, that like mindless Frankenstein thing going on, until eventually eventually he gets his memories back and he acts like Butch, more like the classic Butch, and of course ends up in the employ of the Penguin until eventually the character is cured, and eventually he is killed. Now, first off, the performance is, again, where he's basically Butch, even though he does eventually act like Solomon Grundy, which is very dead accurate, he still goes back to Butch, and that makes sense, because Butch is such a fantastic character. Portrayed by Drew Powell, I believe that is how his name's pronounced. Correct me if I'm wrong. And sorry if he is watching and I pronounce it wrong, I'm very sorry. First off, I like that he's just a hood and basically a henchman. But he does have a lot of street smarts. He's not academically smart, but damn, damn does this character. Just like Victor Zsasz, he lights up the scene, but unlike Victor who relies more on humor, and you definitely know he's a bit psychotic, this guy's more straight. Sane, as in. He's more sane. And the relationship, and I do like he has a bit of character development with the relationship with Tabitha. Whether you like it or not, I personally don't mind it. Overall, I just like Butch. And I would like if Butch could be adapted into the comics. Make it is just the right-hand man to Penguin, but just drop the whole Solomon Grundy angle. But like I said, I love Butch. I love the Butch character. And he is so great when he's with Penguin, just like Victor. They work well with Penguin. Overall, I just love the character. And originally was meant to be a special villain created specifically for the series, but then of course introduced to be Solomon Grundy. Now that could have easily gone wrong, but they managed to make it work for me, and I love that. I really do. Coming in at number 3, the Riddler. Okay, we get into top 3 territory. The Riddler, portrayed by Edward Nygma, real name Edward Nygma, and portrayed by Corey Michael Smith. Where do we begin? I like how in the first season he is basically this forensic scientist. He's this nerd, loves riddles, a bit quirky, basically your average nerd, and he gets along with Jim. I even like how in season 2 Jim even once recalled him as a friend. And I would have liked if we saw an episode really them two having a friendship before he went down to villainy. Like really spell it out. Overall, Nygma is basically that. Originally he's just a neuroforensic scientist, a bit quirky, a little bit insane, but he has a great love, not just love of riddles, but he personally feels like he is friends with Gordon. And in a way, Gordon is friends with him. The two get along really well. Until eventually, however, a love of a woman set him down a path to villainy. Let's be honest, that's really it. After realizing that this woman, Miss Kringle, was being abused by her new boyfriend, a beat cop, he went to sort of break it up. But what ended up happening was, well, he accidentally ended up killing him. He got rid of the body, and already his mental state began to turn. And this continued throughout season 2 until eventually he completely snaps. He loses his mind. Loses his mind, develops a sort of second personality, which began a recurring theme throughout the series. Overall, and as a result, he just went more off the rails. He ended up killing his girlfriend, Miss Kringle, buried her, and of course, buried her, got rid of the body, all that, and of course, eventually strikes up a friendship with the Penguin. And basically, they become like BFFs, and I like that. They really do have great chemistry, like the Riddler and Penguin. Eventually, of course, it's revealed that he's the villain. He set up Jim, ruined basically his life for a while, and he ends up in Arkham. And he's basically has this, he's completely off his mind, and he has this obsession with proving his superiority, but he doesn't want to kill his victims. He wants to tease them, and this leads into season 3, where he slowly becomes more so like the Riddler, after basically the love of his life being killed by Penguin out of jealousy, because Penguin slowly developed feelings for the Riddler. And with him angry, not just heartbroken, he slowly, and when he thinks Penguin's dead, he realizes he needs to reinvent himself to prove that Edward Nygma can continue without the Penguin, and eventually, with his more stick of performing crimes, not just for the sake of proving his superiority, but at the same time to find a nemesis, someone who can match him for wit. And as a result, the Riddler is truly born. And he continues that throughout the series as this guy obsessed with riddles, a very well-known member of the Gotham Rogues, Gotham underworld, but is also constantly flipping with personalities. And of course, season 5, they had this sort of romance between him and Dr. Leslie Tompkins, which I personally didn't mind. And of course, by season 5, he becomes the Riddler. Now, Corey Smith really does an excellent job at portraying the Riddler. I got to admit that I absolutely think that this is one of the greatest live action interpretations. Like I said, one of them. There are many great live action interpretations. I was one of those who actually liked Jim Carrey as the Riddler in Batman Forever, but also liked Frank Gorshin's take on the Riddler in the '66 Batman TV show, along with John Astin, who was also in '66 Batman TV show. Overall, Corey Smith just, for me, looks like the Riddler. Now, I gotta admit, in the final episode where he finally has that question mark, I like the character look. It's very different. Like, my one wish, he used a riddle can. It's the only thing this character is missing. You really feel that this guy is the Riddler, the way he acts. And I like how he just starts off as a nerd and then evolves into the Riddler. I really like how that's really done. It's done very much well. And the split personality he's always battling is really interesting. It's very different to what we expect, but he still acts like the Riddler, a more comic accurate version. That I really love and absolutely do. Now, coming in at number 2 is the Valeska twins, Jerome and Jeremiah. Now, before we get on, let me explain something. These two are practically the Joker. But of course, due to copyright issues, they couldn't actually use the character's name. So as a result, the creators of the show created these two characters. Originally Jerome was the first one. Now both of these are portrayed by Cameron Monaghan. Basically, they both are twins. They grew up in the circus, but each went down a different path. Jerome stayed in the was made to stay in the circus and was continually abused until his mental state broke. Although it's hinted that he had a mental state way before that. While Jeremiah went into a good home, privileged, and was academically smart. Now, automatically, these two have a different background, and how their character development is. First off, Jerome acts like the Joker. He may not have the name, but he acts like it. In many ways, he slowly starts to dress like it. I also like how he has this cut-off face, which is more in line with the whole New 52 angle. Again, he was really great, and he was introduced in Season 1, was a recurring character in Seasons 2 and 3, and again in Season 4 until eventually the character getting killed off. Then the Joker mantle was passed on to his twin Jeremiah, who is brilliant, he is smart, he can invent stuff. Eventually, thanks to Jerome's partners, they gassed Jeremiah, and he's not just his skin changed to look like the Joker, but his mental state doesn't quite break, not until the end of Season 4. Eventually, through Season 5, his mental state has completely gone, is slowly going further downhill off the rails. And eventually, he falls into a vat of acid chemicals and looks more like the Joker, and calls himself Mr. J. And that is the character's complete transformation into the role of the Joker. Now, when when Jerome showed up, his character, it was heavily praised and is considered one of the greatest interpretations of the Joker, despite the fact he's not called the Joker. And automatically, I see why many people can fall in love with this character, and I like how as soon as people started seeing Jerome in Gotham, Gotham's crime would change forever. The gangsters were on their way out, and the more deranged serial killers were coming more through the woodworks. And I loved every minute of it. Now, why do I include both of these two if really I should just include Jerome? Well, for me, Jeremiah is such a great character too. Even though, like many, I prefer Jerome over Jeremiah, I do believe Jeremiah is still such a great character nonetheless. And I like how he is now his character arc too. He may have looked like the Joker, but he's still sane, at least to some degree. But slowly his mental state broke until eventually he became the Joker. And I also like how he's introduced as the sympathetic guy, and he is really sympathetic. He's scared of his brother, and he wants to leave that, just get away from him, just live his life. And as a result, he develops a friendship with Gordon, with Bruce, but then this happened with the gas in his face, he becomes this. And that friendship, what could have happened, completely ripped from him. Overall, even though they're not called the Joker, they are the Joker. They do justice to the Joker legacy but at the same time managed to create the character of their own. And Cameron deserves a lot of praise for that. Not only did he have to portray one character, but he had to also create a completely different one. But the same end result is the same. These are the Jokers. But as much as I like to talk about it, let's get to my number one. And it should be no surprise to anyone. Number one of Gotham's greatest villains is the Penguin. I mean, come on. For those who know me, was there ever any doubt? Taking the number one spot is Robin Lord Taylor as the Penguin. Arguably the show's greatest breakout character. He's been there since season 1 and continues, and he was there to the end. Now, the character's evolution was great. In season 1, he's introduced as a minor gangster in Fish Mooney's mob and eventually rises to become Gotham's greatest crime lord. And basically each season is always his rise and fall. But Robin Lord Taylor just makes the role his own. And I like how he doesn't look exactly like the Penguin. He's not fully fat until really the end of the series. Doesn't wear his trademark top hat until the end of the series. But sometimes he'd be wearing a bowler hat. Again, this is a young Penguin, a prototype Penguin. And I like how he's this villain, but he has his moments where he's not. Again, he's a criminal gangster. Really, he's not a bad guy. He does believe in a code of honor, some ethics, even though he sometimes breaks his own ethics, well, code of honor, but he does have some ethics that he doesn't do. And I do like how this character, out of all the villains on the list, feels the most human. We get to see both sides of him. His relationship with his mother, his relationship with many of the underlings around him, how he views them as friends. Even though he stabs his mentors in the back, he always had great respect for them. Like with Falcone, he may have betrayed him in the end. He said he was a great friend and a wise mentor, but he always had great respect for him. That I've always had great respect for him. Even when Falcone did die, the season 4, he went to the funeral to pay his respects. That shows just how much honor, just how great the character is. He also becomes mayor in season 3. He's a unique crime lord. And also, I just like how the character was slowly changing. That and also his costume with the two-tailed jacket and that cane, that walk. I always loved, and Robin Lord Taylor just looks like a young Penguin. Again, he looks radically different, and the portrayal is just great. He is the star's breakout character. And personally, my number one greatest Gotham villain. I also praise this character quite a lot because it's this portrayal that made me realize the Penguin is my favorite Batman villain. And it's easy to see why. He just owns the role. Despite the fact which you may complain about the writing, and I also liked how he had adopted this kid, Martine, as a sort of son, but Gotham was getting too dangerous, and he was forced to let him go and make sure he never come back to Gotham for his own safety. Again, he is a person who always values, again, and yeah, so he's just that. I also like the relationship with his own personal family, like his mother and and eventually his long-lost father, how they rekindled that relationship. But of course, the Set family is another thing entirely. But that was a good thing because it brought that version of the character, like the evil Penguin, back, full formed, and I just loved every minute of this character. And there you have it, my personal top 10 favorite Gotham villains. Do you disagree? Who's in your personal top 10? Next, we'll still be continuing top 10 Batman villains, as next time I'll be doing my top 10 Batman villains from Batman 66. Hopefully at some point. Now, sorry for the long absence, but I have been going through some crazy stuff right now. And yeah, so I hope you really enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. Write your own list in the comments and who's in your personal top 10. Would you agree with my list? And yeah, just have an awesome day. And from the Steven Hour, so long for now.